על שלושה דברים העולם עומד. על שלושה דברים העולם עומד. על התורה ועל העבודה, על גמילות חסדים. על התורה ועל העבודה, על גמילות חסדים. Can't let you slip, won't let you fall. We gotta heed the call. I hear your voice, there is no choice. The world is bigger than us all. The world stands on three things: on Torah, on holy work, and on acts of loving kindness. In just a few minutes, we're going to learn about the RAC's Racial Justice Campaign, the three legs upon which it stands, and the holy work we all must do to make this world a little better. על שלושה דברים העולם עומד. על שלושה דברים העולם עומד. על התורה ועל העבודה, על גמילות חסדים. על התורה ועל העבודה, על גמילות חסדים. Can't let you slip, won't let you fall. We gotta heed the call. I hear your voice, there is no choice. The world is bigger than us all. על שלושה דברים העולם עומד. על שלושה דברים העולם עומד. על התורה ועל העבודה, על גמילות חסדים. על התורה ועל העבודה, על גמילות חסדים. Can't let you slip, won't let you fall. We got to hear that call. I hear your voice, there is no choice. The world is bigger than us all. The world stands on three things: on Torah, on holy work, and on acts of loving kindness. We're so glad to have you here, and in just a moment, we're going to hear about the RAC's Racial Justice Campaign, the three legs upon which it stands, and the holy work we all must do to make it happen. One more time. על שלושה דברים העולם עומד. על שלושה דברים העולם עומד. על התורה ועל העבודה, על גמילות חסדים. על התורה ועל העבודה, על גמילות חסדים.
Hello, my name's Jordan Berg Powers. I use he, him pronouns. I'm a member of the Racial Justice Campaign's leadership and research teams, and I'm joining you from Nipmuc Land in Worcester, Massachusetts. Welcome, and thank you for joining us. It is incredible to see so many members of our community and our esteemed partners in these virtual space. This evening, we gather across the United States and Canada to mark the launch of the Reform Movement's Racial Justice Campaign. During the next hour, we will hear from the members of the Reform community and honored guests about the three campaign areas: federal advocacy, state-level issue campaigns in our state projects, and anti-racism and racial equity, diversity, and inclusion work. We will hear personal stories, learn from experts, hear about opportunities to engage in the campaign, and we will commit to the pursuit of racial justice through this campaign and beyond. Finally, a few tech notes before we begin. First, we promise you that our program will end on time and that we will not conflict with President Biden's address to Congress. During today's call, closed captioning is available. To turn closed captioning on or off, please click on the live transcript icon on the bottom ribbon of your Zoom window. You can also access closed captioning via the link being added to the chat now. We also will be using the chat box intermittently throughout the call. Please click on the chat icon at the bottom of your screen to open the chat box. Lastly, we are recording this evening's launch and will share it after the programming for anyone who is unable to join us live. And with that, it is my sincere pleasure to introduce members of the Racial Justice Leadership Team, Hannah Daniel and Jill Hosen, and members of the Racial Justice Research Team, Liana Friedman.
Hi, everyone. My name is Hannah Daniel. I'm 22 years old and a senior in college on Osage land in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. I'm also a proud Asian American, non-binary, bisexual, Jewish person of color, and I'm so thankful to be here with you all tonight. As we know, no community is free from oppression, and that includes our own Reformed Jewish community. We seek the courage to face our imperfections, hold ourselves accountable for continually learning about the ways we unknowingly perpetrate oppression, and seek to create a community where people from all backgrounds can bring their whole selves to the table.
I'm Liana Friedman. I use she, her pronouns. I am queer, white, cisgender, a student at George Washington University, 18 years old, and joining you from Irvine, California on Ahashiman and Tongva land. We know each of us hold intersecting identities. Some of those identities are unseen, marginalized, and dismissed. We also know that no one should be asked to leave any part of themselves behind. We come here today as people of color, white people, Jewish people, LGBTQ+ people, people with disabilities, people with various family structures, single people, divorced people, people with partners, and people who have lost their spouses for many years. We vary in age, demographics, affiliation with Judaism, lived experiences, and a host of other differences. Most importantly, we come here because we know our communities are not yet whole.
My name is Jill Hausen. My pronouns are she, her. I am an African American Jewish woman, a friend, a caregiver, a daughter, and a sister. I am calling in from Claremont, California on Tongva land. It is an honor to be here today. We are here because we are being called to disrupt over 400 years of systemic oppression and acknowledge that our diversity is what makes us strong. Our diversity is essential to this movement, and the incorporation and affirmation of our diversity is what will fuel our pursuit of racial justice during this campaign. Throughout this evening's programming, we invite you to reflect on how your own identities are showing up to the racial justice campaign. It is now my pleasure to introduce Rabbi Jonah Pesner, Director of the Religious Action Center and Senior Vice President of the Union for Reform Judaism.
Thank you, Jill. Thank you, everyone who has shown up tonight, joining us as we launch the Reform Jewish Movement's Racial Justice Campaign, knowing full well the reality that one campaign can't possibly solve centuries of systemic racism, but humbly committed to hold ourselves accountable to even more centuries of enduring Jewish social justice values laid out in the Torah, amplified by the prophets, and preached by our rabbis. Doing justice, loving mercy, and walking humbly with our God demands no less than a full commitment to achieving racial equity, the persistent moral challenge of our lives. While many of us were relieved by the verdict in the trial for the lynching of George Floyd, his memory for a blessing, the reality is that since the trial began on March 29th, more than 70 people have been killed by law enforcement. That is more than 3 people every single day, the majority of whom were people of color. And now we add the names Daunte Wright, Ma'Khia Bryant, Adam Toledo, Andrew Brown, Roger Allen, and too many more to the litany we offer in mourning and outrage. May their memories be for a blessing. And we declare again and again and again, Black Lives Matter. And we're keenly aware of the stark increase of the ongoing violent attacks on the Asian American and Pacific Islander community. We stand in solidarity with AAPI folks, including many Jews, in the face of bigotry and violence. These horrific attacks, like the deadly shooting in Atlanta just a few weeks ago, did not occur in a vacuum. They spring from the same climate of xenophobia, bigotry, anti-Semitism, and white supremacy that led to hate-fueled killings in Charlottesville, Pittsburgh, El Paso, and too many other communities. And amidst all this, in the wake of the white supremacist, racist, anti-Semitic assault on the United States Capitol, state legislatures across the United States are trying to pass laws that restrict the right to vote as the forces of white supremacy continue to maintain control through racist and anti-democratic policies. During these days of danger, let us remember our safety comes in our solidarity, and our redemption will come through our democracy. None of us are safe until all of us are safe. Let us find strength in our scripture. This week's Torah portion, Amor, which means speak. Tonight, we share stories of systemic racism. We articulate our commitments, first in our words and then in our deeds. We will hold ourselves accountable. And among the commandments that we find in this week's Torah portion is the injunction to light the Ner Tamid, the flame that was to be lit in perpetuity in the ancient tabernacle. But in modernity, we've misunderstood this commandment completely, calling it an eternal light that we leave on all the time in our synagogues. The ancient practice was much more powerful. Every day, the leaders would attend to the altar and light the flame anew. Every night, they would guard and protect it. These ancestors remain a constant reminder to us to be ever vigilant in nurturing the light. Friends, in these days of darkness, in the dimming of our democracy, let us remember the Jewish obligation to bring light into the world every day. Oh, Dr. King understood that well. He taught darkness cannot drive out darkness, only light can do that. And hate cannot drive out hate, only love can do that. Tonight, we commit to overcome racism, bigotry, and hate. We commit to ignite the flames of justice and shine forth the light of love. So thank you, all of you, the leaders who have worked so hard on our civic engagement campaign and understand the urgency to continue our fight for democracy. To all of our donors, so many of you on this call who have given so generously of your time and your resources again and again, and to our allies and our coalition partners, thank you. And we're asking once again to lead us forward. And no one better to lead us than the amazing Yolanda Savage Narva, the RAC's Director of Racial Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion, who is also celebrating her birthday tonight. Let's wish Yolanda Savage Narva a happy birthday.
Good evening. Thank you so much. Thank you, Rabbi Jonah Pesner, for such a warm welcome and for being my partner in this work. I'm Yolanda. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm sitting on Pamunkey, Piscataway, and Anacostan land. Thank you for the birthday wishes. It has really been a great day and I feel the love. And being here with you all tonight is inspiring and a powerful way to spend the evening. We are so honored this evening that we have friends and representatives from local, state, and national organizations with whom we work. If you are here from one of our partner organizations, please put your name and organization in the chat so we can thank you. Our partners include Jewish, faith, and secular organizations, as well as colleagues from the White House and Congress. Each of our partners shares our commitment to ending centuries of systemic racism. Without our partners, our world would be less whole and less holy. I would also like to thank our many donors who have already generously supported this campaign. We quite literally could not do this work without you. As we pursue greater racial justice, thank you for being here this evening and for sharing our commitment to this work. A couple of weeks ago at a virtual Shabbat service, my Rabbi Joshua Baraha talked about the importance of the concept of time in Judaism. He specifically referenced the concept of time in terms of past, present, and future. He said that we spend a lot of time thinking and living in the present, the right now. And before we know it, our thoughts, actions, and goals become a string of right nows. We have to be careful about the falsehood of right nows because it can consume a lot of our time. It is our responsibility as human beings to think about future generations. We all have ancestors who have gone before us, and we will have descendants who will come after us. Progress only comes when we can think beyond here and focus on there instead. Each and every one of us on this call tonight has a role to play in shaping the future of this country and the world to make it the place we want it to be for all humanity. Time can be measured using the terms past, present, and future, but can also be measured and seen through the lens of racial equity, diversity, and inclusion as a three-dimensional concept of memory, actuality, and anticipatory liberation. The past, the history of this country, has been extremely cruel and inhumane in so many ways, starting with the genocide of the indigenous people, enslaving Africans and bringing us to this country, the internment of Japanese Americans, putting asylum seekers in cages, and the continued murder of Black and Brown people. When does this end? Is there any hope? My answer is yes, there is hope. The past is a part of our memories and DNA, but the future belongs to us through our anticipatory liberation. The Racial Justice Campaign is the foundation upon which we can focus our efforts to dismantle systems of oppression, leading to justice and equity for all people. The Racial Justice Campaign will provide opportunities for us to engage in the internal individual work of our addressing our own implicit biases and racism, our mirrors work, as I call it, while creating opportunities for our external collective advocacy efforts, our windows work. You see, white supremacy has created a system of hierarchy and inequities. It is designed to divide, disconnect, and isolate us from one another, from ourselves. By owning our own internal biases and racism and working together to continue to fight against injustice and inequities, we intentionally bend the arc of the universe toward justice. The launch of the Racial Justice Campaign is happening right now and will be soon a part of history that we are all making together. What we commit to do during this campaign will help strengthen the foundation for a more equitable, just, and fair future for all of us, because none of us are free until all of us are free. And with that, it is my pleasure to introduce President Derrick Johnson of the NAACP. He is leading this storied organization with vision and passion, showing the kind of leadership that I saw even when we were in school together at Tougaloo College. Derrick and the NAACP are treasured friends of the RAC, and we are so honored to welcome him this evening. President Johnson.
Good. Thank you, Yolanda, and happy birthday. Thank you, Rabbi Pesner, and thank you to the RAC for inviting me to participate in this program. I do know we are limited. We all are anxious to hear the address from the president. Someone who's taken office and have made commitments and follow through on many of those commitments. And one of those commitments was to have a cabinet that looked like America. And we are proud of that. Another commitment was to allow for this nation to heal in the backdrops of a pandemic that we have not seen in over 100 years. And for me personally and my family, after receiving our vaccine, we're beginning to have a sigh of relief. But even with that sigh of relief, we also understand that in struggle, we must continue to move forward. And anytime our democracy is under attack, as we have seen over the last 4 years, as we witnessed on January 6th, organizations like the RAC, NAACP, we must stand strong together, because if either of our communities falter, all of our members are at jeopardy. Particularly when you look at the reality that the rise of white supremacist activity has come full force. The boldness by which individuals are able to march in Charlottesville, the unconscionable massacre that we witnessed in Pittsburgh, the attempted massacre in Louisville, although we found individuals killed based under this false premise of white supremacy. Unfortunately, that existed in the highest office in the land. But because of the RAC, NAACP, and many of our partners, we worked hard together in November to turn out the vote like never before. We worked hard together in January to do what many people thought was impossible, to elect both the first Black and Jewish members of Congress from the state of Georgia. And that was not an easy feat, but it was much more difficult than it should have been because of the barriers to access the polling place. And as a result of that, we are standing together to support the passage of House Resolution 1, a bill to make it easier to vote, a bill that would allow for individuals to automatically be registered. Voter registration is a vote suppression measure. Why should any citizen have to fill out an application as if they were applying for a job to exercise their constitutional rights? Under HR 1, anyone that applied for a driver's license or a state ID or any state service automatically are registered to vote. It will require states to allow for voter registration online. Under this bill, it would have campaign finance reform so individuals' voices can be heard louder than corporate interests that sometimes prey upon the very individuals that we all love that's a part of our community. It would allow for an independent redistricting commission, the commission that will be charged with drawing the political boundaries by which individuals are elected. In addition to that, we are standing in solidarity around another measure, HR 4, to restore Section 5 of the Voting Rights Act. In 1955, many members of Congress voted to support a piece of legislation that was groundbreaking. And that groundbreaking legislation was in the backdrop, the result of a lot of blood, sweat, tears, and unfortunately, killings. Killings in our state, the state I live in, Mississippi. 2 individuals who came down to support the movement of African Americans, James Chaney and Andrew Schwerner. Andrew Schwerner was one that was fighting hard on behalf of CORE, the Congress of Racial Equality. He partnered with James Chaney, who was working really hard and a resident African American of Mississippi, and they recruited another young individual, Andrew Goodman, who was a part of students who met in Oxford, Ohio. And as they were traveling back to Mississippi, unfortunately, white supremacist domestic terrorists murdered all 3 of them. Because of their murder, because of the activities of Freedom Summer, because of the sacrifices that so many people made, and that historic march across the Edmund Pettus Bridge, our nation finally realized that we had to create protection to make our democracy work. But unfortunately, the Supreme Court struck down the most crucial components of that historic act, Section 5 of the Voting Rights Act. And HR 4 is being moved along the John Lewis Act to restore the protections that was put in place as a result of the sacrifices our communities, the Black community, the Jewish communities, made through blood, sweat, and tears in the 60s so we can make this democracy work. We stand in solidarity because we must. We stand in solidarity because of the love that we have for our community. We stand in solidarity because we believe in justice. Thank you for this opportunity, and I look forward to continuing the work between the RAC and the NAACP, between the Jewish community and the African American community. Understanding we cannot allow the fringes of either of our community to pull us apart. We must pull all of our community to a center of gravity that demand justice, love, and mercy. Thank you.
Thank you, President Johnson, for that inspiring presentation and for your continued partnership in this work. Good evening. My name is Angelica Ruiz. My pronouns are she, her, and I am a member of the Racial Justice Leadership Team and Research Team, and I'm speaking to you from Kickapoo Land in Dallas, Texas. It's wonderful to be a part of this exciting launch and to see so many people on Zoom. For more than 60 years, the RAC has worked to educate, inspire, and mobilize the Reformed Jewish community to advocate for social justice. A core part of that social justice work is protecting the right to vote and ensuring that all have the freedom to vote. Without this, we will not see any progress on the other issues like gun violence prevention, climate change, and reparations that our movement cares deeply about. That is why we launched the 2020 Civic Engagement Campaign. Working in close partnership with Black, Indigenous, and people of color-led organizations, our campaign activated 15,000 leaders to combat voter suppression by mobilizing almost 800,000 voters. This contributed to the highest voter participation rates in more than a century. The 2020 election saw a historic turnout of all Americans, but particularly Black and Brown people. We also saw white supremacists storm the US Capitol, determined to supplant the will of American voters with their own. Politicians today continue to work to silence the voices of voters of color. We are engaging in this Freedom to Vote campaign to strengthen democracy and to combat white supremacy. So, what are the goals of this campaign? We will work to pass the For the People Act, which will protect our freedom to vote by creating important national standards for federal elections, making voting accessible across all states. We will also work to pass the John Lewis Voting Rights Advancement Act, which will restore the Voting Rights Act and strengthen the freedom to vote for Americans across race and region. We are joined in this righteous work by many other incredible partners, both faith-based and secular organizations. Many of our partners in this work are organizations led by people of color and working deeply in the communities that are most harmed by anti-voter laws. Black and Brown communities have been engaging in this work for generations, and it is important that we uplift their voices and listen to them as we work to protect the right to vote. So, what can you do? And what is happening next? During this campaign, we will call on Reformed Jews to act as individuals, and we will call on Reformed congregations and communities to move their members to help pass these bills and strengthen democracy. There are 3 immediate actions that you can take in the next month. First, you can contact your senators right now, telling them to support the For the People Act and the John Lewis Voting Rights Advancement Act. Second, on May 8th, join partners for the John Lewis Day of Action. There will be 100 events, including Good Trouble voter motorcades in cities across the US, calling on Congress to pass these bills and raising public awareness. Register and find an event in your area at the link in the chat. And finally, on May 24th, leading up to an expected Senate floor vote on the For the People Act, we will hold a digital day of action to urge elected officials to vote yes on the bill and spread awareness about the critical vote throughout the Jewish community and beyond. Looking ahead, we will be asking your congregation or community to mobilize its members for action at 2 key times. First, we will ask all Reformed congregations and communities to meet with their senators in late July and early August to urge them to support our 2 voting rights acts, voting rights bills, and take all possible actions to ensure their passage. To prepare you for these legislative visits, we will hold a training on June 10th at 8 p.m. Eastern Time that will provide you with the information about the voting rights bills and how to effectively advocate your members of Congress. You can register now for this training in the chat. The second national action will take place in late September after the High Holy Days. I will now turn it over to Rabbi Dara Lithwick to share about opportunities to engage in the campaign in Canada.
Merci, thank you. Shalom, bonsoir. I'm Rabbi Dara Lithwick. I use she, her pronouns. I'm here in Ottawa, an unceded Algonquin and Anishinaabe territory, and I'm honored to serve as the Tikkun Olam chair for the Reformed Jewish Community of Canada, including its 25-member congregations in URJ Camp George. Though there are many differences between Canada and the US, unfortunately, many of the same racial inequities are found on both sides of the border. Disparities in education, pay, and contact with law enforcement are all impacted by race, with Black and Indigenous Canadians experiencing worse outcomes overall. We can make a difference by doing the same important internal racial justice, equity, diversity, and inclusion work that US congregations are doing. But we can also make a difference by raising our voices to change policies and practices that have particularly harsh impacts on Canadians of color. In last week's Parsha, we learned that to be holy, kadosh, we must be just. We read, "You shall not render an unfair decision," and we must judge each other fairly with tzedek. Within the current federal legislative framework, we'll focus on mandatory minimum penalties, which disproportionately impact Black and Indigenous Canadians. Mandatory minimums apply to a range of offenses, most commonly related to firearms. But study after study shows that while such penalties do not meaningfully deter crime, they have clearly coincided with an increase in the imprisonment of Black and Indigenous Canadians. A recent report on the impact of federal mandatory minimum laws over the past decade showed clearly that Black and Indigenous offenders are well overrepresented in admissions to federal custody. We're excited to do this work together as a Reformed Jewish Community of Canada, along with the wider reform movement of which we are a part. I'll now pass it over to leaders from the RAC state projects to share about their efforts.
Hi, good evening. My name is Michelle Singleton. I use she, her pronouns. I live in the sunny state of California, actually in Southern California. I am a part of the RAC California State Project. The RAC has 8 state projects: California, Ohio, Texas, Illinois, New York, New Jersey, Florida, and Pennsylvania. The state projects have done racial justice work for years, and they are taking part in the larger reform movement racial justice campaign by participating in the national campaign and contributing to the campaign through the state-focused work. The states are participating in racial justice campaigns to change state policies based on unique opportunities and partnerships within each of their states. These state campaigns cover a range of racial justice issues such as parole reform, policing and mental health issues, and the disproportionate burden of environmental degradation on communities of color. If you're in one of these state project states, your most powerful way to participate in the movement-wide campaign is through your state project. We'll now hear two examples from leaders in our state projects about their campaigns.
Hi, good evening, everyone. I'm Sandy Dochin, he, his, from Austin, Texas, Temple Beth Shalom, Tonkawa territory. I'm thrilled to say that RAC Texas has doubled the number of leaders in our projects over the last couple of years, particularly in this legislative session. What we did the last few months is preparing for this legislative session going on now. After an extensive research process and 3 town hall meetings earlier this year involving about 170 congregants from around the state, we voted to concentrate on voting rights as our big issue. And therefore, we launched our Democratic Protection Campaign in January. We're fighting 2 big bills in the Texas House and Senate, omnibus bills. I call them ominous bills. More than 100 congregants from 20 some odd congregations have helped us to strategize on what we should be doing. So far, we've talked to about 20 Texas House members and or their staffers, and 7 of our state senators and or their staffers. It's been great to do outreach with other advocacy groups in collaboration, including interfaith organizations, the Texas NAACP, Legislative Black Caucus, and business leaders. Very important here. I'll give you a special note in Tarrant County. We've had some terrific work in particular where friends from 3 congregations, Fort Worth, Arlington, and a subdivision called Colleyville, have marshaled their forces quite effectively all over the county. Similar or smaller congregations in fast-growing suburbs in our state have as much of a role to play as the larger temples in Houston, Dallas, San Antonio, and Austin. Lesson learned and for the future. And the best part of our engagement is our chief cat herder and organizer, Rabbi David Siegel. Thank you, and thanks to all my fellow Texans. Appreciate it.
Hello, my name is Erin Solka. I use she, her pronouns. I am a member of Congregation Beth Israel in Austin, Texas, on Tonkawa land. I am the Social Action Vice President of NFT's Texas and Oklahoma region, and I am a member of the RAC Texas core leadership team. I joined the core team at the beginning of my term about a year ago. Most of my work last year was focused around civic engagement and how we could bring teens into this work. We took advantage of having our programming online so that getting involved in civic engagement work would be more accessible for everyone. After the election, RAC Texas shifted into a research phase to determine what our priority issue would be. Me and 4 of my fellow teens were a part of this research team. We participated in legislator meetings, talking about voting rights, along with other adults in our communities, because RAC Texas chose to focus on democracy protection as its main issue this session, as Sandy was saying. And then as teens, we also decided to focus on criminal justice reform. Specifically, this meant advocating to pass the George Floyd Act in Texas. So first, in March, Nifty Tour, RAC Texas, and the URJ Green Family Camp collaborated to put on the RAC Texas Government 101 program, where we went through an interactive, lighthearted simulation about how a bill becomes a law in our state legislature. This was a great experience, and it was unique because it was open to teens and adults, meaning that people of all ages planned the program and participated in it as well. Currently, to wrap up our year, we are working on scheduling a virtual teen-led meeting with the state legislature to discuss the George Floyd Act and let our representatives know that Reformed Jewish young people in Texas care deeply about police accountability and justice for all in our state.
Hey everyone, my name is Zach Berman, and I am calling in from Chicago with the honor of speaking to you tonight on behalf of RAC Illinois, for whom I have been serving as the Legislative Visit Coordinator about mental health and race. Unfortunately, I think it's safe to say that these days, just about everybody, either directly or indirectly, is affected by mental illness and or substance use disorder. Now, Jewish tradition tells us that providing mental health care is an obligation not only for the doctor, but also for the community as a whole, and that the government also has an obligation to ensure that all people can access health care, and this includes mental health care. In Illinois alone, currently, about 1.75 million people suffer from mental illness. But what's really truly staggering and heartbreaking is that about 56% of those illnesses, and that's around 900,000 people, go undiagnosed and untreated. Now, these numbers at a glance might make it seem like this is an everyone issue, and in a way it is. But racial and ethnic minorities in the United States, they experience comparable rates of mental illness as white Americans. However, significant racial disparities in their access to mental health services are well documented, meaning that this is definitely a racial issue. Communities of color face multiple barriers to effective treatment, including, but not limited to, lower rates of insurance coverage, a mistrust of the public healthcare system, stemming primarily from decades of abuse, and a general lack of diversity amongst healthcare practitioners. Addressing these disparities is a key reason why RAC Illinois selected the Alternatives to Crisis Escalation, or ACE, Act as our racial justice campaign for 2021. The ACE Act is designed to prevent dangerous escalation of mental health and substance use crisis by increasing awareness and utilization of the Adult Mobile Crisis Response Services, an early alternative service to law enforcement intended to de-escalate a situation before it turns into a crisis that would require law enforcement, and it's currently only available to those on Medicaid. This act aims to strengthen the capacity and effectiveness of an existing hotline for these services and expand eligibility for the Adult Mobile Crisis Response to all adults, regardless of their insurance. These measures would reduce the reliance on 911 emergency calls directed to law enforcement, which, as we've all seen too many times, can have tragic outcomes that shatter lives, families, and communities, particularly for people of color. The successful implementation of this program would also help to build a foundation for the possible rollout of a national 988 mental health crisis hotline system. To support the ACE Act, RAC Illinois is currently conducting visits to state legislatures in areas where we have the power to advocate for the passage of the ACE Act. Having 50,000 people in Illinois helps us a lot. Also, another driving force behind the selection of this particular campaign was the passion among our youth for increasing the access to mental health services. They really emphasize that this is what they care about to us. So furthermore, RAC Illinois is thrilled to support our first action led by and for teen leaders, On May 16th, our local Jewish youth will be hosting a kickoff of their own to help launch teen engagement in RAC, Illinois. Scheduled for the afternoon of Erev Shavuot, this virtual gathering will incorporate the practice of study on this holiday, while also providing the opportunity for youth leaders to add their unique voices to the ACE Act campaign. Thank you all so much for your time. It was an honor getting a chance to speak.
Thank you, leaders from our state projects. It is now my honor to introduce Dr. Dietra Reiser, owner of Transform for Equity, an anti-racist repair group that supports organizations and leaders in building capacity for diversity, racial equity, and belonging. Dietra is an alumna of Bend the Ark's Sella Leadership Program and a member of Temple Sinai of DC. Dietra?
We are here tonight because we want to be good ancestors, because we have this deep desire for a just and equitable society. We have looked through our windows and recognized that the society we live in has been built on an uneven foundation. As a Black child growing up in the US, I cannot remember a time that I was not aware of my race. My parents were intentional about that. They wanted to make sure that they gave me and my siblings the protection we needed to live in this world. Fast forward some years, and my husband and I began to talk about how we would parent our children, how we would be intentional with raising children who have a strong Black identity and Jewish identity. Looking at my beautiful children and thinking of the many, many, many beautiful children of color in the US and in our Jewish community, I am struck by the fact that it is not just the generational pain and the DNA that they are carrying. It is the continued need for them to navigate systems and institutions that are racist and inequitable. 4 years ago, Temple Sinai in DC answered the call from the URJ to work towards dismantling racism within our synagogues and being spaces of belonging for everyone who comes through our doors. That internal work is necessary because I, along with the 1 million other Jews of color in our community, have not always found a home. We have not always been embraced. In addition to setting the intention of embracing our entire community, Temple Sinai began the work of being affirmatively anti-racist. We recognize that there is no longer room to not be racist, that we must work towards dismantling racism and being anti-racist. This work requires individual, internal, transformational change. We know that transforming systems for equity takes individuals, each of us, unlearning the learned implicit biases that we all carry. At Temple Sinai, we have reached for this goal by asking our members to take part in a 6-week facilitated discussion group called Building Racial Stamina in Jewish Community that holds up our intersectional identities, examines the history of our country, considers the systems of racism and the actions that we each can take to interrupt racism, both internal and external. We are bending towards justice. There are many wonderful organizations led by many wonderful people of color doing the work of dismantling racism. The Jews of Color Field Building Initiative is a national effort focused on building and commission studies that have a practical purpose of guiding the Jewish ecosystem to be more equitable. The Racial Justice Campaign spotlights actions that we can each take to be engaged and move us towards equity. We are also asking, I am also asking, that each of you take the steps that are needed to put on the lens of racial equity by engaging in the internal work of anti-racism. Action must come with anti-racist intention and dignity.
Thank you so much, Deidre, for sharing with us this evening. I would now like to hand it over to the leaders from Chicago Sinai Congregation.
Good evening. My name is Jason Taylor. My pronouns are he and him, and I'm joining you this evening from Chicago, Illinois, where we sit on Potawatomi land. When Rabbi Limmer asked if I would join a URJ diversity, equity, inclusion training last year, my answer was no. And I'm pretty sure he knew it would be. It's not that I didn't care about diversity, equity, and inclusion, far from it. But I spent much of my adult life avoiding DEI opportunities in the majority white spaces of my personal and professional life. In my mind, I refuse to be typecast as the Black guy you ask whenever you want to talk about Black people stuff. Thankfully, Rabbi Limmer knew the right buttons to push, and I joined somewhat reluctantly. Thank God that I did. The training began on the what and why of DEI, but quickly pivoted to the how. It asked us to look at our own congregation and to be critical, to ask the question, how are we putting our values into action? For example, we may signify our values by the existence of an all-gender bathroom in our synagogue, but we aren't acting on them until we have ensured that no one must ask where it is located. I want to thank the URJ for this amazing program and how it has transformed me. And I've taken more steps in my own life to put my values into action instead of shying away. I'm okay with being the Black guy talking about Black people stuff. I want to thank Rabbi Limmer as well for pushing the buttons, pushing me when I didn't even know I needed it.
Good evening. My name is Anna Balujo from Chicago Sinai Congregation, and my pronouns are she and her. We must be the change we wish to see in the world. More than 30 years after Gandhi said those words, my recent experience as a student of DEI has awakened an understanding of what that means for me in the present moment. I came to the DEI experience thinking I was already pretty evolved. After all, a few years ago, I started a diversity hiring initiative at my company. I am a Jew, part Asian, and I'm in an interracial gay marriage. I'm practically a poster child for diversity. I'm not saying I didn't think I had anything to learn, rather that I learned a lot more than I expected to. I have a greater awareness of the common ideas I've embraced without thinking and their impact. I realized that I needed to disrupt business as usual in my brain. So now I try to interrupt myself and ask why, of my friend's husband who became a Trump supporter, or my neighbor who supports AOC. On reading news commentary, I ask, what is the basis for their opinion? Of my own knee-jerk reactions, I ask myself, why did I feel that way? As a result, my understanding of and empathy for others has grown. It is so easy to think that what we do is of little consequence in the vastness of the world, but the opposite is true. Whenever we affirm each other's shared humanity, we are taking a step toward a future of greater harmony. After all, we are all stuck on this rock together. Thank you.
Thank you, Anna. My name is Sarah, and my pronouns are she, her. Like many people, I initially didn't think about anti-racism as a journey or even necessarily as work. It was just a state of being. Was I or was I not racist? That shift in my perception of anti-racism work to a practice and a journey was a crucial change. It pushed me to seek out opportunities to work internally through education and self-reflection, and opportunities to work in my community. Places to work with others to make positive change, such as the efforts our Sinai team started with the URJ and continues on. When asked to share where I am in my anti-racism work, the main response that came to mind was in progress, both for myself and for Sinai. I don't believe there will be a time when I or our congregational community can say that we are done. But my goal is to keep up the work, to continue to grapple with my own experience as a white person and a Jew, to continue to interrogate the way I view racism in the world and the systems it is embedded in, and to continue to find ways to connect and work with others to dismantle racist systems, policies, and ways of being.
Hello, everybody. Evidently, I don't know how to unmute. Thank you, Sarah and Anna and Jason. I'm Seth Limmer, very proud rabbi of Chicago Sinai Congregation. I use he, him pronouns. And it's our hope that as participants of the Racial Justice Campaign, we will commit to addressing racism both in and outside of our communities, knowing that we cannot truly or effectively do either one without the other. Ultimately, this will not only make our own community stronger, but will also enhance our ability to organize and to advocate externally for racial justice. And now I would like to introduce Susan Friedberg Carlson, the wonderful chair of the Commission on Social Action, and longtime URJ North American board member, Michelle Singleton, member of the Racial Justice Campaign and leadership team.
Thank you, Seth. Throughout the evening, we've learned about the Reform Movement's Racial Justice Campaign and ways to engage. Now is the time for you to commit to action. The urgency of this moment calls us to act now and to commit to the campaign and to racial justice. We must reflect inwardly within our communities and within ourselves through an anti-racist and ready lens. And we also must pursue racial justice outwardly by advocating for meaningful legislative change at both the state and national level. Anti-racism and ready work and advocacy are dependent upon one another. One cannot be done authentically without the other. We must hold ourselves accountable to our commitment to racial justice. This is why we now invite you to fill out a commitment form. So when you log off of tonight's call, you will have definitive next steps to take and a record of your commitment so that you can hold yourself accountable.
We are now going to ask everyone to click the link in the commitment form in the chat box, or simply type in rac.org/rjcommit into your browser. Please take 2 minutes to fill out the commitment form. Let us know what commitments you are ready to make and how you will move your community into action. With so many people accessing the form at once, if you receive an error message, we encourage you to please click submit again and again, however many times it takes to fill out the form after the launch. We really want to record all of your responses. As you fill out the form, you are committing to attending trainings, taking part in strategic actions, and learning opportunities within the 3 campaign areas. Please commit to participate in an upcoming REDI training series through which you and your community can begin further your anti-racism work. Trainings begin on May 20th. Commit to take immediate action on the For the People Act and the John Lewis Voting Act Rights Advancement Act. It's a big word, you guys. By contacting your legislators and participating in the May 8th Day of Action. There will be an outdoor event, including car or caravans or votercades, all taking place in over 100 cities across the US to raise public profile and build pressure to pass the bills. And finally, learn more about the freedom to vote and how to lobby your US senators on our upcoming June 10th training. And if you live in a state, once again, with a RAC State Project, please commit to participating in that statewide effort as well, such as attending a campaign kickoff event, which we were having one in California. I'm sure Illinois, New York, New Jersey, all of our state projects are doing that upcoming, and take part in any of those upcoming strategic actions.
We will not underestimate our power.
As you finish filling out the commitment form, we would like to take a moment again to thank everyone who has so generously supported the reform movement. Our work is not possible without your partnership. If you are able, we encourage you to make a gift to the Racial Justice Campaign, which will ensure our continuation of this essential and sacred work. You can donate by clicking the link in the chat now. Finally, stay tuned for a follow-up email from the launch that will include links to all of the trainings, calls, and resources that we mentioned tonight. And now I'd like to introduce Kelly Whitehead, a rabbinical student at Hebrew Union College finishing second year, who will be leading us in our closing Jewish teaching. Kelly?
Thank you. Every year at Passover, we sing, had God brought us to Mount Sinai and not given us the Torah, Dayenu, it would have been enough. Had God given us the Torah and not brought us out of Egypt, Dayenu, it would have been enough. This song helps us experience the Passover Seder as if we were personally witnessing the Exodus from Egypt. The imposed empathy of this song helps remind us all there is to be grateful for in our own lives. As a Jew of color, passionate about all my intersecting identities, I am torn by the term Dayenu. I am filled with the compassion that the Torah teaches me to have, and frustrated that the freedom achieved by my ancestors has yet to be fully realized by all members of my community today. As Jews, we can have gratitude and at the same time acknowledge that many remain in perpetual systems of oppression. We can simultaneously be appreciative of our place in society and use power in that comfort to bring others along to freedom. Last week, as I waited with bated breath for the verdict in the trial of George Floyd's murderer, I kept thinking enough. Instead of that would be enough for us, I felt we've had enough. Therefore, I offer a new Dayenu. The fact that last week's trial was suspenseful, enough. The fact that the murder we all witnessed went to trial, enough. The fact that George Floyd was murdered in the first place, enough. The fact that Black and brown bodies are overly policed, enough. Even after King marched with Heschel, the fact that racism is systemic and white supremacy is still persistent, enough. The fact that racism exists within our own communities, present in microaggressions and the fixable lack of trainings within our institutions, enough. As Jews, we say enough. People of color in this country await true freedom and justice after centuries of enslavement, Jim Crow, and mass incarceration. We say enough to the hostility and internalized racism and biases. We can use our power and the empathy we practice year after year. And this week, the Torah portion is Amor, which literally means speak. We use our voices both to remember and to advocate for meaningful change, and we say together, enough. I am now so pleased to introduce a change maker, Henry Drangel, to conclude our launch. Henry lives with his parents and his sister in Kew Gardens, New York. He is currently in 8th grade and attends Russell Sage Junior High School. He loves to sing and act and is mostly proud of being an African-American Jewish young man. Henry will now lead us in the Shehechianu blessing as we officially begin the Reform Movement's racial justice launch. Henry.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam shehechianu v'kimanu v'higianu lazman hazeh. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam shehechianu v'kimanu v'higianu lazman hazeh. Amen.
That is tough to follow. Thank you, Henry, for leading us in the Shehechianu to mark this sacred moment, the launch of our campaign. Thank you to everyone for joining us this evening. Please be on the lookout for a follow-up email with all the information that you will need coming to an inbox near you. Have a wonderful evening, and thank you for being with us.